Preventing harassment, sexual assault, and discrimination at work. Cleansolution, a janitorial company training. What is sexual assault? Rape, statutory, forcible compulsion, or victim incapable of consent. Sodomy, oral or anal sexual intercourse with a person under 16. Unlawful sexual penetration with an object other than the actor's penis or mouth with a person under 14. Purchasing sex with a minor. Sexual abuse, sexual contact without consent. Online sexual corruption of a child. Contributing to the sexual delinquency of a minor. Sexual misconduct, public or private indecency. Incest. What is sexual harassment? Words or physical conduct related to sex. Severe or pervasive and creates a hostile, intimidating, or offensive work environment. Unwelcome, and a reasonable person would also find unwelcome. Sexual harassment, quid pro quo, definition, this for that. This, physical or verbal conduct of a sexual nature. That, any employment decision. Implication is that the victim must submit to advances or face consequences at work. Examples of sexual conduct: touching, rubbing, hugging, pinching, patting, kissing. Blocking or impeding movement. Slurs, jokes, epithets, stories, foul or obscene language. Leering, stalking, staring gestures. Drawings, photographs, cartoons, other images. Degrading comments, offensive terms of address. Remarks, flirtations, requests for sexual favors. Intrusive questions, sexually suggestive language. An employee may withdraw consent at any time. Sexual harassment, withdrawn consent. Civil rights. What is discrimination? To discriminate means to make a distinction between individuals or groups based on common characteristics, real or perceived. Not all discrimination is unlawful. OAR 839-005-0005. Discrimination is against the law when employers make decisions because an individual is a member of a class protected by state or federal civil rights statutes. Harassment and discrimination based on other protected classes. It is a common misunderstanding that harassment is only unlawful when it is sexual harassment. Unlawful harassment and discrimination may arise because of an employee's membership in any protected classification, and we are all members of a lot of protected classes. State and federal civil rights protections. Oregon and federal civil rights laws. Partial list. Civil Rights Act of 1964, Federal Title VII. ORS Chapter 659A. Additional protected classes under Oregon civil rights law. Partial list. Workplace harassment, warning signs. Unwelcome verbal or physical conduct, offensive in nature, protected class. Definition of harassment. The standard for determining whether harassment insufficiently severe or pervasive to create a hostile, intimidating, or offensive working environment is whether a reasonable person in the circumstances of the complaining individual would so perceive it. Severe or pervasive. Generally rude or annoying behavior by itself is insufficient to meet the severe or pervasive test. In determining whether acts are severe or pervasive, courts look at frequency, whether it is physically threatening or humiliating or a mere offensive utterance, and whether it actually interfered with the person's work. Isolated instances of poor behavior, unless extremely serious, are not sufficiently severe or pervasive. Harassment happens. What to do? An employer is liable for harassment when the employer knew or should have known of the conduct, unless the employer took immediate and appropriate corrective action. An employer may be liable when an employee is harassed by supervisors, co-workers, agents, non-employees in the workplace. BOLI and the courts will consider the extent of legal responsibility and control over the non-employee. Preventing harassment. Lead by example. communicate standards. Train all employees. Train managers and supervisors. Preventing harassment, leading by example. Managers and supervisors set the tone. Resist the urge to join the harassment party. Do not turn a blind eye or a deaf ear to comments, jokes, or symbols of harassment and discrimination. Have the difficult conversations. Preventing harassment, communicate standards, develop a comprehensive written policy. Include definitions and examples. Include examples of protected classes, including but not limited to, and add language like "and any other class of persons protected by local, state, or federal laws, rules, or regulations." Provide multiple avenues to report. Direct supervisor, any member of the management team, human resources, the company president. Include anti-retaliation provisions. Preventing harassment, training. Conduct trainings on general principles of workplace harassment. Explain and distribute copies of the anti-harassment policy. Take a look at what your policy says. Emphasize the need to treat everyone with dignity and respect. Preventing harassment, training managers and supervisors. Conduct trainings on general principles of workplace harassment. Explain procedures for responding to complaints. Emphasize that all complaints must be taken seriously. When appropriate, require managers to involve the HR department, in-house, or outside counsel. Promptly investigate all alleged instances of harassment, even if a formal complaint is not filed. Take immediate and appropriate corrective action, which may include termination. Do not retaliate or permit retaliation to occur. Direct managers and supervisors not to retaliate. Prohibiting retaliation. Opposition to harassment need only be based on reasonable and good faith belief. An individual is protected even if the investigation does not result in a finding of discrimination or harassment. Taking corrective action. When an investigation yields substantial evidence, management should take immediate and appropriate action to end harassment and prevent it from reoccurring. Provide counseling and training in milder cases while outlining the consequences if it happens again. Take stronger action in more offensive cases and termination and/or suspension in extreme situations. Monitor the situation to ensure no retaliation. What is cultural competency? Ability to communicate effectively and appropriately with people of other cultures helps to ensure that the needs of all members of the community are addressed. Ongoing learning process aimed at integration and transformation of knowledge about individuals and groups of people into standards, attitudes, policies, and practices that enable them to work effectively together. Define values and principles. Demonstrate behaviors, attitudes, and structures that enable people to work effectively together across cultures. Embrace diversity. Manage the dynamics of difference and adapt. Acquire and institutionalize cultural knowledge. Incorporate this knowledge into policy and practice. What to do if you experience harassment. Take notes and document what you see. Preserve any physical or documentary evidence. Check your company's policy and processes. Put it in writing. Make a written complaint to your supervisor, manager, or human resource department. If you feel like your complaint is not being properly handled, contact the Civil Rights Division at 971-673-0764. Fear of coming forward. If you see a coworker experiencing harassment, unwelcome words, or touching, remember, the law protects victims and those who report unlawful conduct from retaliation, even if the allegations cannot be proved. Unreported conduct usually gets worse over time. What have we learned? Discussion points. Rude treatment versus harassment. How the frequency of harassment affects liability. When the target of teasing is not offended. When a customer or supplier vendor of the business is the harasser. Cleansolution. Have any questions, concerns, or comments? We are here to help. Report all harassment, sexual assault, and discrimination. Call 503-432-8302.